Welcome to the very grand surroundings of the GLC debating chamber. I don't think I've ever been in a room with so many lawyers, and I'm not quite sure what the collective term is, but I'm sure it's not very complimentary. We're here gathered for a very topical debate on the future of adoption, and it's coming just a few days before National Adoption Week, which starts on Monday. I'm Rosemary Bennett, the social affairs correspondent on The Times, and for the last year I've had the privilege really of running a campaign calling for more and speedier adoption. It has been enormously rewarding and we've had, I hope, a considerable amount of success in the last few months. In particular, I was incredibly pleased and rather surprised when David Cameron used his conference speech a few weeks ago to highlight some of the problems in the adoption system. And he promised he would throw his weight and the full weight of Downing Street behind efforts to reform the system. I hope we'll be hearing a bit more from him in the next couple of weeks. Despite writing extensively about the subject, I've focused largely on what's going on in local authorities, the declining number of children being placed for adoption and the delays that they face. Where the Times has perhaps been less successful is finding out what are the legal obstacles getting in the way of more adoption. I mean, is it true, for example, that judges are overly sympathetic to the rights of the extended family? Are they perhaps looking for certainty in their decision-making where no certainty exists? That's why I'm particularly grateful for Osbornes for gathering together key members of both the legal profession, including Sir Andrew McFarlane, along with social workers and those with first-hand experience of adopting and being adopted. Each of our speakers will talk for about 5 minutes, so there'll be plenty of time for discussion afterwards. We're going to hear first from Martin Narey. Martin and I have got to know each other extremely well over the last few months. When we decided at the Times to really go to town on this campaign, we concluded, rather unusually for a newspaper, that we didn't have all the answers ourselves, and if we really wanted to come up with some powerful recommendations for reform, we needed some outside expertise. Martin had recently stood down as Chief Executive of Barnardo's and thankfully agreed to compile a report for us on the system, which we published in July. And he has recently been appointed Ministerial Advisor on Adoption, although, as he's always telling me, I am retired. Martin, do you want to get things started?
Thank you very much indeed, Rosie. I think if I was sat where you are this evening and saw all these speakers, I'd be rather depressed. So my determination is to use rather less than my 5 minutes. And I'll do that by, if I might, just saying 3 things about care, 3 things about permanence, and 3 things about increasing adoptions. But let me start with care. I believe that for hugely well-intentioned reasons, we delay and wait too long before intervening and taking children into care. There is a fallacy that we have record numbers in care. Actually, we have numbers in care right now which are quite modest relative to the numbers just 20 years ago. But we have a system which is gripped by optimism, and we wait too long to take a child into care. And taking a child into care is the beginning of the adoption process is very, very important. Secondly, that same optimism sometimes encourages us to return children back to the homes from which they were neglected. And that can sometimes work. And one of the privileges of leading Barnardo's, as I did for 5 years, was helping families to get back on their feet. And when that happens, it's hugely rewarding. But the evidence is that we err on the side of what seems to be best for the birth family, what seems to be best for the mother, and we put children at risk. And Elaine Farmer's research published last year, which shows that 60% of children returned from care to their family homes, 60% of them are neglected again within 2 years, and that's very, very worrying. And the third thing I want to say about care, and this is the biggest fallacy of all, care does not make things worse. Living in neglect is not better than living in care, as some people assert. Care can be improved, and care should be improved, but care makes things better. And leaving a child in neglect because of an illusion that care might make things worse is very wrong, and wrong for the child. The second thing I want to say 3 things about is permanence. A lot of people who've criticised things I've said in my report may not, I'm afraid, have read it, because the three things I want to say about permanence are this. There are more than one type of permanence. There is permanence through placing a child who can't return to the parents with a member of their extended family, and that can sometimes be dramatically successful, although I am troubled at the number of special guardianship orders going to very young children when we all thought they would go to older children. But extended family placements can really work well. Secondly, fostering can be hugely successful. My enthusiasm for adoption is not some way of suggesting that fostering can't be very successful as well. It can, particularly when long term. But the third thing I want to say about permanence is simply that adoption is unique. Legally and emotionally, it's unique. It offers a permanence and a stability for a child that nothing else can, and we need to recognise that. So my third area is what can we do to increase adoptions? I think adoptions could increase significantly if we were to do three things. First of all, if post-adoption support were routinely to be granted rather than exceptionally, the number of adoptions and the success of adoptions would increase significantly. That's not to say that I think overall there's a crisis on disruptions. Suggestions that 20% of adoptions are disrupted are a nonsense. Adoptions of younger children might disrupt in very, very small proportions than that. But greater adoption support would lead to greater success. Secondly, we need an assessment process for prospective carers, which is less intrusive, less repetitive, more analytical, and takes less time. And I simply don't believe we can't improve and streamline the current system while still being rigorous. And the effect that will have on parents coming forward will be dramatic. And thirdly, the final thing I want to say about adoption is we need to be more pragmatic about matching. I've seen too many evidence in the months I've been looking at this of children who are waiting after they've been through the process, despite all the delays, they have been cleared for adoption and they are waiting for the perfect adoptive parents. The evidence shows that greater pragmatism in matching is much needed and does not have deleterious consequences, and particularly giving adoptive parents a lead in identifying the children who are right for them can be dramatically successful.